Hi, my name is Todd Romano. I'm an attorney at the Romano Law Group in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I'm currently serving as the president of PITLA. I wanted to talk to you today about those stickers that we've all seen on commercial trucks out on the roads that say, "Safety is my priority," or "We hire only safe truck drivers." Many of us have seen those same trucks out on our roadways involved in unsafe driving practices. And unfortunately, the only way or the best way to deter unsafe driving practices and to help police our roads and police unsafe trucking companies is to report instances of unsafe driving practices. Many times law enforcement authorities are not there immediately following a crash or an unsafe truck driver situation, and we need to take it upon ourselves to help keep our roadways safe by reporting instances of unsafe driving practices. Many of us don't typically like to get involved in situations like that. We don't want to be bothered later by being a witness in a lawsuit or a claim. But we must take it upon ourselves to report unsafe driving practices and to pick up the phone when it is safe to do so and call the 1-800 numbers that we see on the backs of these commercial trucks, so we can be sure that we report unsafe driving practices not only to the trucking companies themselves, but then also when it is safe to do so by contacting law enforcement authorities. As I mentioned, the easiest way to do this, when it is safe to do it, when you pulled over, you're in a safe spot, is to pick up the phone and call the 1-800 numbers on these stickers, and then to also report unsafe driving practices immediately to law enforcement authorities. It is also crucial anytime you observe unsafe driving practices excuse me, or a accident involving a commercial truck, to, when you can safely do it, memorialize and document everything you can about the accident or about what you have observed. No detail is too small or too unimportant to not document. And what do I mean by that? If you observe a crash, when you can safely do it, use your cellular device to take photographs, to take video footage, get the information of the trucking company, get the DOT number on the truck, get the license plate number, get information, if you can, about the driver, get photographs of the vehicles that are involved in a crash, take photographs of any physical evidence left in the road, gouging in the road, debris left in the road, skid marks left in the road. And if you can, try to photograph any landmarks in the area so that those can later be used to help recreate or reconstruct an accident by experts or engineers that may be involved in a legal claim later. It is also extremely important that you identify yourself to law enforcement authorities or to emergency personnel at the scene of a crash as to your identity. As I mentioned earlier, many folks typically do not like to get involved in these situations. They don't want to be bothered. They see a crash and they simply turn a blind eye and go around and they're on their way because they don't want to be inconvenienced. But many times it is folks like yourselves that observe these crashes that are the only individuals that can later on help establish liability, establish what happened, and it's very critical that you identify yourselves to law enforcement personnel or emergency personnel at the scene so that it is documented as to your identity, your contact information, your phone numbers, and then certainly any evidence that you preserve by either photographs or writing it down when it's safe to do so. It's imperative that you pass along that information to law enforcement authorities or emergency personnel who can then pass along that information to law enforcement authorities. As I mentioned, many times in these crashes, it can be years later when there's a legal claim or a trial, or someone is trying to piece together what actually happened back on a certain date when there was an accident or an instance of unsafe truck driving behavior. And so as much information as can be safely documented by you, that is usually critical information that can help later establish fault or liability in a crash. Also in instances where there's been a blown tire, if you can photograph the tire safely or other aspects of the surrounding scene that I talked about earlier, it's critical that you try to do that. The truck driving industry, by and large, is an extremely important industry for commerce in this country. Most truck companies practice safe driving habits. They hire safe drivers. They police themselves well. But there are instances where certain companies or certain truck drivers may not always do that. And that's why it is important for you and I and our loved ones and family members and friends to do what we can to help keep our roadways safe, report instances of unsafe driving practices, and by doing that, we can all lend a hand and assist each other by keeping our roadways safe.